Welcome to Haunted Hospitality, Southern stories told by spooky gingers. I'm Zoey.
And I'm Robin. I'm back.
Yay!
Yay!
Do you have a story for us?
I'm back. A story? Yes.
Okay.
Personal story, How's Life edition. Yeah, so obviously, well, I mean, I don't know if people are... If you've been listening to the past couple episodes, you know I've been out for reasons, capital R, the past couple weeks, and that is because I broke my leg because a car I was in park and then was suddenly in reverse going down a hill. And, you know, I've equated it to that song, Should I Stay or Should I Go?
Okay.
Because the verse goes, should I stay or should I go? If I go, it could be trouble. If I stay, it could be double. And so that's like what I was thinking. I was like, am I going to stay in this car as it's going backwards down this hill? Or am I going to jump out of this car and it's going backwards down a hill? And I would like to say that it was my intuitive decision making that led me to a choice, but really my friend was also in the car and she yelled, Robin, jump out of the car. And so we both jumped out of the car. She was fine. I broke my knee. I broke my leg. I recently, yesterday, read the x-rays from like the very first break. I don't know why I did that to myself. I Googled a whole bunch of words that had a whole bunch of like scary, gross meanings. But anyway, I am in recovery. If you are watching this on YouTube, you can see that I am not in my usual space. And that's because I can't make it up the stairs. I am currently using walkers and wheelchairs and stuff. And hopefully in September, I might be able to walk a bit.
Woo!
Woo. But right now I'm feeling fine.
Okay. Well, Robin, you know you have a deadline. You have to be able to stand up by my wedding.
Yes. Honestly, I've thought about, like, I'm like, okay, I gotta do this. I gotta be able to walk. I gotta do this right. And I was like, could I have a cane? I don't know. I don't think I'll need a cane.
Okay.
I'm just saying it could be a look.
Robin, if you needed to wheelchair your way around, we'll figure it out.
I don't think I'll need. I don't think I'll need to wheelchair by that point.
Okay.
But I think I should be good to walk down the aisle at your wedding.
Yay!
100%. Yay! I won't be wearing heels though. Cannot do that at that.
How dare? No, I'm not going to be wearing heels either.
All right. How's your life, Zoey?
My life's good. So, Kari and I have been, as we are in the final 100-day countdown to our wedding, we have secured catering. Yes, so
I think I saw a Facebook post about this today.
Yeah, so I posted it jokingly, but I think people are reacting.
How are we supposed to know that?
Well, okay, I thought it was pretty clear from the photo that I was at Soda City and it was a food truck. So it's not.
You had told me that you were hoping for a food truck at your wedding.
Yes.
So when the caption was, "We're sampling our catering menu,"
laughing emoji.
Like, verbatim. Everybody laughs at themselves. I don't know. I use the laughing emoji for everything, even when I'm not laughing.
Well, the food truck is the catering, so they're going to be. I mean, when I said sampling, I meant we just went and bought some food.
No, yeah, I got that.
Okay. But there are people.
That was the joke.
Yes, that was the joke. But there are people reacting as if, like, we went to a catering event. Like, I had messages coming in, and people were like, "Oh my gosh!" And so, no, we just went to Soda City, and the food truck is there. Though I do have to say, we walked up, and so they have a business card, and on the back side of the business card, it has like if you get 10 stamps, you get the 11th one free. And we walk up and we order our food, and she goes, "You guys are here almost every single week. Like, do you not have one of these?" And we're like, "We do. It's just we keep forgetting it in the car." But it was nice that she recognized us. And then we told them, "By the way, you're the ones catering our wedding." And they're like, "Oh, you're the ones we've been talking to." So that was nice.
So, okay, I thought you were doing tacos. That was not a taco truck.
That ended up falling through because Kari gave his information to them like 3 or 4 times, asking them to call us back, and they just never did.
Oh. Well, yeah. Customer service is very important. Well, I am looking forward to that menu at your wedding.
Yes, it's exciting. The other thing that we did today is Kari and I both have a trip. Happens to be the same weekend, but we're going separate places coming up in the next month. And so we went out.
Very romantic.
I know, right? And we went out, and I got my first, like, luggage set. So, like, cute, like a carry-on size and a medium size that match each other. Cute little luggage set. So I'm like, oh, my first big girl luggage.
Oh, nice. Well, I hope y'all enjoy your individual trips.
That happened to be on the same weekend, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, that happened to be on the same weekend. All right, do you have a something for us? Keep in mind, it's been about a month since I've recorded anything, so I'm a little bit rusty on how it goes. You might have to remind me.
We did do a little bit out of order, but it's okay. I think your story was a little bit more important than mine.
Oh, yeah, you always go. Well, you also did do the introduction.
Yes, so we're just a little bit backwards. But yes, I do have a something for us. It's a something spooky. So in our last episode, when I covered the Yorktown Memorial Hospital, I did mention something about crossroads because they had a hallway that it was like they called it a four-way, but it was two hallways that intersected each other that formed a crossroads that they said there were a lot of ghosts there. And I was like, I feel like I hear a lot about crossroads being spooky, and I feel like it's related to liminal spaces, but I'm not sure. I think I'll do that as a something spooky. So I'm doing that as a something spooky. So,
ooh, yay.
I was correct in thinking that it's a liminal space. You know, liminal spaces are, I've covered them, but they're in between areas. So, like, a staircase is in between two floors, a hallway is in between two rooms, you know. So, liminal spaces between two worlds, therefore, it's a little bit more open for the other side to come over. So, that's why we have a lot of ghosts on stairs and in hallways. Between two roads, so the crossroads is a liminal space as well. But I did learn something pretty interesting. So in Greek mythology, the crossroads were associated with Hecate. Have you heard of Hecate? She's a Greek goddess.
Okay, yes. So I never knew how to pronounce that in my head, so
I did Google it because I
know the spelling.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she is the goddess of boundaries, crossroads, witchcraft, the moon, necromancy, and ghosts.
Oh, she covers a lot of things that we cover.
Yes. And, like, I feel like in modern times with, like, modern witches, a lot of them do associate her with, like, sapphic things. So more lesbian-esque vibes. So I don't know if it's just because she's the goddess of witchcraft.
I'm sorry, that phrase, lesbian-esque vibes.
But I just thought it was pretty interesting that even back in Greek times, crossroads were related to the goddess of witchcraft and ghosts. So our relation goes all the way back there. Crossroads were also associated with Hermes, but that's just because he's the god of roads and travelers, along with like 50 other things.
I always liked Hermes.
Yeah. He seems like, oh, you don't want it? I'll take it. Then during medieval times in Great Britain and Ireland, they would bury criminals and people who died by suicides at the crossroads. And they would even use crossroads as locations for criminal punishment or execution, thinking it would, like, confuse the dead. Because back then, unfortunately, people who died by suicide were seen as bad as criminals, and you couldn't be buried in a Christian lot. If there were a lot, at least in Great Britain and in Ireland, if there were a lot of people being buried and or killed at crossroads, you can imagine why there might be quite a few ghosts there. And then, of course, there's the crossroad demon. So, Robin, you have seen Supernatural, so you know what the crossroad demon is. But the theory is that if you do a certain thing, you can, like, draw a circle, toss a coin, bury something, say a certain phrase in Latin, and then you can summon a crossroad demon, and you'll exchange your soul for a gift. And there's a blues song, I forget what the blues song is called, but it basically tells the story of this guy who sold his soul for a musical ability, and so he became like a superstar, but then the devil came for his soul like 10 years later.
You're not talking about the devil went down to Georgia?
No, not the devil went down to Georgia. It was like something like he sold his, I think it was literally called he sold his soul to the devil or something like that.
Oh, okay, that's a very descriptive song title.
But yeah, so that's why we see Crossroads as something spooky and potentially could see more ghosts there than in general areas.
I have to say, when I am driving at night... Okay, when I'm driving at night, if I can sometimes feel spooky no matter what, but also I feel like when I come upon a crossroads, and understand that I'm talking about like rural, backwoods, that kind of stuff. When I come upon a crossroads, there's a certain vulnerability I feel. Like I'm extra scared. And that could simply because like, okay, well now there's more vantage points I need to be aware of, or
right.
I don't know. Yeah.
Can I tell you unrelated but kind of scary story from when I was at a crossroads?
Totes.
Okay. So, I used to work night shift as a manager after I graduated college, right? Mm-hmm. And so we closed at 4 a.m. I was driving home from that job, and so right before I left, one of our employees, because they drove around, they said, yeah, there's some drunk dude at the intersection up there. And it was on the intersection of two pretty major roads. And he said, yeah, there's some drunk guy walking around in the middle of the road, on the sidewalks, whatever. And so we closed up. I didn't really think anything of it. I get in my car and I drive up to the stop sign, or the light, and it's a red light. And I'm sitting there. There's no other cars around. And I see this drunk guy, and he has like a bottle of Gatorade in his hand, I think. And he comes up to my car, to the passenger side, and just starts banging on my window. And I'm like,
no, sir.
And it was a red light, and I'm somebody who tries not to run red lights, even if there's nobody around, But I said, and I booked it. I just drove off because there was this man banging on my window. And I figured if I did get a ticket for it... At night. Well, it was like 4 a.m., but still, like, at night.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? If I get a ticket from it, I can just say, there was a man beating on my window. I was scared for my life. Luckily, no ticket came from it.
I think you have a very reasonable excuse for that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's my personal crossroads.
I'm very happy that you went with your gut on that one.
Thank you. Thank you.
Crossroads one.
But
he could have been a ghost.
You know what? I did not consider that. I think I would have been much calmer in the situation if it had been a ghost. But anyway, Robin, what were you saying?
One of the things I'm going to be getting into with one of the stories I have is a thing where you're wondering if it's a real person or if it was a ghost. And real person is scarier option.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, do you want to go ahead and get into those stories then?
I do. So I am shifting up, I think, our general format a little bit with this episode, partially because I have not had to exercise my executive function in my brain for about a month now. So there's maybe I wasn't ready to learn the in-depth history of a building and all the families who lived there and owned it, etc., etc. But
how dare you, Slack?
One thing I've been kind of wanting to do. I know, just slacker. But one of the things I've been kind of hoping to do lately, just because I really, really love, when it's possible to find it, non-touristy haunted places. Because all these touristy haunted places, there is a clear monetary reward for promoting yourself as a haunted location. And that does not mean that what you're saying is false, but it does make it... Often the stories are hokier. How about that?
Yeah.
So I really wanted to find something that I could just take the tourist element out of it, the monetary reward out of it, and I found it. And it occurred to me, and I was like, why have I never thought of this before? It combines two things I love, and before I reveal what it actually is, Zoe, I want you to know that I'm hoping this can kind of, how we have haunted boozy places?
Yes.
Part 1, Part 2, and stuff. I'm hoping this can be something that we build on in the future. I have the title option, Creepy Encounters in the Wild.
Wait, When you say wild, do you mean like the woods?
The woods.
Ooh.
Yeah. So
how about out of the woods?
I have what?
How about out of the woods instead of into the woods?
Out of the woods.
Yeah, no. I like your better.
Well, that's a Taylor Swift song. Okay. Yeah, track 4 on 1989. So shut up with that look to me. Shut up with that look. But today I have 5, I want to call them ghost stories, but actually I looked at them and I'm like, ooh, they're really, you might actually have like 1 or 2 ghost stories in there, but actually it's quite varied, these spooky encounters. All definitely, except for that one thing that might be a dude, paranormal in nature, or at least spooky and creepy in nature. How about that?
Okay.
But these are from 5 personal stories that I've collected over the internet. The first one, I'm going to kind of dictate to you the way we usually do our storytelling, and then the others, I'm going to just kind of read verbatim.
Okay.
And then I'd love to kind of discuss them afterward with you. So, Zoe, the first one comes from an article in BlueRidgeOutdoors.com called Appalachian Trail Ghost Story by Brad Lane. In this, Brad talks about a very spooky experience that he believes was a ghost experience he had while hiking the Appalachian Trail. So it was late summer. Brad had some time off of work and decided to rekindle his love for hiking alone. There are some people who are very avid solo hikers, and it sounds like he used to be, but it had been a while since he'd done it, and he wanted to give it a try again. So he started out in Catawba, Virginia. By the way, quick aside, really soon into this, Virginia, what is going on with you? Because the amount of things that I saw that everybody was talking about, well, this was in Southern Virginia, this was in Southern Virginia, what is up? I don't know. I had to put that out there. Virginia, what is with you?
Okay.
So, okay. He's starting along the Appalachian Trail in Catawba, Virginia. He was finding that he was not enjoying hiking alone the way he had perhaps a few years beforehand, because he said that he really didn't like the silence, because in the silence you're also hearing little things that you cannot really identify right off the trail. And it was just kind of, I don't want to say freaking him out, but it was making him anxious. So, you know, he hikes however many miles you hike the first day, and when he gets to the place where he's going to set up camp for the night, he has a tent, cookware, and everything, and he tries to start sleeping, but it takes quite a while, and he was only really able to start sleeping once it was light out. And this first experience I'm going to share with you, I'm not exactly sure if this happened the first night or the second night, so just know that.
Okay.
But his sleep was quite fitful. It's kind of when you're not exactly sure if you're awake or you're asleep. And so he's staring up, just kind of really hoping to get rest, and it's not happening. And that is when he hears footsteps. Now, keep in mind, this isn't like a state forest hike. When you are on this type of trail, you know, you might come across another person, but it's not happening every little bit. It is kind of rare. And so the fact that it was happening at night was a little bit odd. And in addition to that, he heard what he described as a grumble. He said it sounded agitated, like someone was talking to themselves and was really upset. So he was kind of disturbed by the sound, and he wanted to believe that, because it sounded like a person to him, and he wanted to believe that he'd mistaken it for a person, and like that his brain had just attributed it to that sound, and he was just hoping there was some other explanation out there. He did not sleep again for the rest of the night and only fell asleep when it was morning time. The next day, he only set out in the afternoon because, you know, because he's not sleeping at night, it's kind of getting changed. So he starts hiking in the afternoon, and he only makes it 3.5 miles before setting up camp for the next night, because he doesn't want to hike at night because it's just not safe. So he had a small fire going this time, and he smoked a cigarette by the fire. When he was done, he tried to throw the butt of the cigarette into the flames, but he missed. So he got up to put the cigarette back into the fire, and he decided to start tending the fire then. And when that was done, he turned toward where he'd been sitting before, and he saw a man. This guy had on a red plaid shirt with burn marks toward the bottom. The man's beard had ash in it, and what looked like lit embers. Like it was kind of like still kind of like fire glows a little bit at the ends of hairs, you know, if you've been burned a little bit, like it was like that. And the man wasn't looking at Brad at first. He was looking toward the spare firewood that Brad had stacked up, and he was about to pick up one with a burnt hand. Like his hand was burnt looking too. And that was when he noticed he was being watched, and he looked back up at Brad, and he did not like that he had been seen because his face contorted in like anger, like a scrunched up nose and gritted teeth. And the man left, he left immediately when he had been seen. But before he left, Brad noticed a really odd detail about his eyes. They were white, like only white.
Oh.
So that really, really, really freaked Brad out. This is like the worst solo hike story.
Yeah.
That really freaked out Brad. So he packed up camp immediately. And again, this is night. He had a headlamp for night hiking in case he needed to do it, but he only had it on about half the time while he was walking, because he immediately got up in the dark. He had it only on about half the time because he didn't want that man to be able to find him again. Yeah. And again, he's thinking like this was a ghost experience, but he's very confused about it. He didn't want that man to be able to find him. He also was kind of scared of like, if he has the headlight on, like, is he gonna see anything that he doesn't want to see? He was just really scared. He hiked all that night and into the next morning until pretty precisely 12:30 p.m. actually, because at that point he was starting to see, he wasn't seeing people, but he was seeing that like, okay, this is land maintained by people. And so he ended up in a pasture. So he's at this point off the trail. He ended up in a pasture at about around noon, like I said, the next day. He decided to put up his tent, and because at this point he's exhausted, he ate a little bit of lunch. He said like some meat and cheese he had packed, and then he fell asleep for a couple hours, but he hadn't like actually made it into the tent. By the time he fell asleep, he just kind of went to sleep in the grass, which is actually a good thing because he woke up to a really strange smell. Mm-hmm. He opened his eyes and he saw that his tent had burned. There was smoke, and the tent actually, when it burned, it kind of melted like the plastic of the tent. And so he saw that.
Oh my gosh.
Got up, got his things other than the tent, and ran away from there. Uh-huh. And he kept running until he came across finally a road. It was a gravel road. He starts going down the gravel road, and then he sees a car and realizes it's a cop car. And so he's like, okay, well, I'll go for help there. The cop car is parked right in front of a burnt house. Burnt down to the ground house, like the remains of a house. So, he talks to the cop. The cop does give him a ride back into town or back to his car or something. And Brad chooses not to say anything about what he experienced because he kind of thought he would sound crazy, but he asked about the house. The house had been burnt down 4 days ago. They were pretty sure it was arson, or they were thinking it was arson. And unfortunately, the family who lived inside had died, a mom, a dad, and 2 daughters. And it had been burnt down, like I said, 4 days ago, which was actually the first day of his trip. So he's thinking, he ends this, and from the title of the article, he says ghost story. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking that wasn't a ghost story.
You think that was the arsonist?
I mean, I think it could be.
If it wasn't for the eyes.
Yeah. Okay, so the first time I read it, I forgot about the eyes while I was reading it.
Gotcha.
And I was like, oh, that was clearly a dude, and you were clearing a lot of danger because this guy must have been following you.
Yeah. He
eventually got your tent. He was trying to take your firewood.
Yeah, but if it would...
But you're right, the eyes.
The eyes, and if it wasn't a ghost, if it was an arsonist, why would they burn the tent when he was very clearly not in the tent?
I mean, I don't know why people burn things.
True.
Maybe he just wanted to burn it. Maybe he wanted to freak the guy out, and it's not like he could burn the guy alive if the guy was just in the grass and could have easily escaped.
Yeah.
Maybe he wanted to mess with him. Now you do have the question, though, of, well, why didn't he burn the tent when the guy was, if he was there that first night, if he was those footsteps and that grumbling, agitated voice, why didn't he burn that tent?
He was a new spirit and didn't know how.
So you think this guy recently died?
Well, the way I was reading into it, I thought it would be revealed at the end, was that the ghost was the father that died in that house.
I wonder if that's kind of where he was leaning to.
But I
was thinking that
he didn't.
It could be the arsonist, and I wasn't thinking that the father and the arsonist were the same person.
Well, but
I mean, it could.
Yeah, it could have been. Especially, I mean, he doesn't give us more information about that arsonist thing. But I mean, if the father was the one who did I feel like not necessarily. I mean, ghosts. You can't confirm that they're real. Never mind, understand their logic. But
That's true. We're trying to logic out a ghost, potentially.
But the fact that his shirt was burned, his hands were burned, and his beard was, like, kind of on fire still, like, that just, to me, seems like the last moment of life, you know? Like, you're burned from dying. And if you died in a fire, perhaps as you're learning your ghostly powers, you don't know how to control setting things on fire.
Interesting that we have two kind of fire ones close to each other with your potential poltergeist, pyromancer.
Confirmed poltergeist?
Either that or mischievous grandchild, one of the two. All right, well, that is our first creepy encounter in the wild.
Do you want to do on a scale of 1 to 10? How haunted do you think it is after... Maybe on a scale of 1 to 5. Make it a mini one.
Make it a mini one. Okay. We don't have a lot of nuance in these. Okay, scale of 1 to 5. Do you think that was a ghost?
Yes. I would say 4.
Okay. Scale of 1 to 5. I think... Okay, honestly, I'm leaning toward a 2.
Okay.
Just because I'm, like, thinking that if that were me in that situation, you kind of want to be prepared for worst possible option, and the worst possible option is that was a real dude.
Yeah, I guess so.
All right, my next one, this takes place, well, he kind of says where it takes place. It takes place in either Virginia or Tennessee because it was written 4 years after the fact, and he could remember the trail he was on, but he couldn't remember the exact location that this specifically took place.
Okay.
So this is from Reddit user Red Bull Son of Rambo. By the way, guys, I don't know what that means, but I just love everybody's Reddit names. And this has been edited for length. All right, I'm reading this first person. Let me lay out the background. I am in the South, hiking the Appalachian Trail. I am unsure of the exact location. It was between Pearisburg, Virginia, and Johnson City, Tennessee. I tried doing some research, and I couldn't find much information other than the Bell Witch, and that is the opposite side of Tennessee. The witch. Hey, Zoey. This has been tearing me apart for the last 4 years. I am hiking along with my through hiker buddy. It is a clear day and no sign of rain, nothing but blue skies. We are pretty distant from any town or even road for that matter. The forest is clear of underbrush and nothing but bare trees. We could easily see beyond 300 yards. About 150 to 200 yards away, up on the hill, we saw a brunette woman gazing off in the distance, not looking towards us. She was wearing a white gown, possibly a simple wedding dress. This is extremely odd for this area, so my pal and myself called out loudly to her, "Hey ma'am, are you lost?" The woman keeps her torso and shoulders still and jerks her head towards us. The speed and angle of her head turn should have broken her neck. She let out a sharp, ear-piercing scream, almost like a banshee from those old stories. We ran as fast as we could with our packs. As we are running away, the wind picks up heavily, nearly hurricane levels. Branches are snapping, and we even heard a tree fall in the distance. The rain started pouring, sideways rain, strong wind. I know the weather can change like a dime in the mountains, but this just felt different. Like we were cold, from 80 plus degrees to nearly 60 or less, with wind chill that was constant. Other hikers were caught in the rain as well. They were as confused as we were with the unexplained change in the weather. We couldn't tell them what we saw. We couldn't even explain it to each other. We both knew we had saw her, though. We continued on the trail and never mentioned it. He goes on to ask people what they think it could be throwing out the idea that it was a prank or a coincidence in the weather. Neither of those things I noted would explain why the tern didn't break her neck.
The explanation I could come up with was he's just wrong, if you want to...
What do you mean?
Like, he was just wrong that she could have turned her head that sharply without breaking her neck, you know? Just, like, he's not a doctor. He doesn't know the physics of turning your head, you know?
Well, I guess so, but okay, if you were to see a person, I guess is what you would call them. If you were to see a person up ahead of you, and they're looking, like, in another direction from you, the fact that he noted that it's, like, she kept her shoulders and her torso the same, and it, like, really freaked him out, like, the switch in her head.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I feel like that's something.
No, yeah, I agree that it was a freaky thing, and it probably was a woman in white / banshee thing, but if we wanted to look at it from a critical standpoint, it could be just he was spooked, and so he was wrong and exaggerating.
He and his friend.
Yes. Well, they couldn't even talk to each other about it, so.
That's true, they couldn't even talk to each other, they just, like, had this shared experience. I feel like I would really need to talk it out.
Yeah.
So, not everybody is me, though. So, okay, I'm going to go into a couple of different theories that he had, and then one that I had from previous research, because it reminded me of something. But he, he said, like, the scream had reminded him of kind of, like, stories about banshees, and my first reaction to that was that what I know about banshees, and again, not an expert, I just did something spooky about it, which does not make me an expert, but that banshees are heard, they're attached to a family, and then they are heard most likely by specific members of that family that, for whatever reason, have a connection to a banshee. So, like, Zoe, if you and I were in a living room together, and if we were, let's say, sisters, and someone in this hypothetical family had either just died or was about to die, if our family theoretically had a banshee connected to it, it's likely that not both of us would hear the banshee. In fact, I mean, 100% it would be you. But, probably one of us would just hear the banshee. And so I was thinking that, like, okay, I'm going to just assume that he and his friend both witnessed and experienced everything the way he is writing it, because he seems to believe so. And it would be weird that he and his friend, not blood relative, would both hear the banshee from that logic. However, that could be me operating under maybe a specific breed of folklore about banshees. One Reddit user named Semperabellus, suggested it could have been a banshee, and that banshee's screams are warnings that somebody is going to die, of course, but that it could have been her warning that someone was going to die because of the sudden change in weather, and that perhaps because they did turn back when they heard her at that warning, that if they hadn't, perhaps it would have been a really bad thing for them to have been up on that ridge or wherever they were hiking to in that weather specifically. Like, they maybe had been in danger of dying and would otherwise have died if she hadn't done it. So that is the banshee option.
Okay.
I have one more that I actually think every single thing except for one thing points to it.
Okay.
Zoe, do you remember the Old House Woods?
I do remember the Old House Woods.
So this is a set of woods in coastal eastern Virginia, I think right along the Chesapeake Bay area. So at least on the opposite side of Virginia than the story, which also could have taken place in Tennessee. But this, like, matched up so well to the Storm Woman that I went back to my notes for the Old House Woods, and I'm just going to read to you verbatim what I had written there. So, the Old House Woods has a ghost that gives me major Mary the Wanderer vibes, but like a chaotic neutral and or chaotic evil. She wears white but glows green or blue. That is, like, the one exception.
Okay.
They didn't mention green or blue glowing. She will walk through the forest or sometimes hover in the air above the trees. Sometimes when you see her, she'll scream, and the sound will seem inhuman. People call her the Storm Woman because when you see her, generally there's a storm heading to the Old House Woods. I also wrote in a below bullet, gives me Banshee vibes too. I think they saw the storm woman, but
that
like
would be
a
pretty
storm
cool.
woman.
Yeah. I mean, it could be the same one if they were in Virginia, or honestly, like, the storm woman doesn't have to recognize state lines, you know? Like, that could just be her area, you know?
It could also be that, like, nobody's saying there's one banshee. Maybe there's not one storm woman. Maybe they can, like, vary a little bit. But nobody on that Reddit thread in particular had commented, like, known folklore other than banshee that was similar to that. But I liked it. I think it's just so similar.
Yeah.
Everything but the glowing blue or green skin. And one explanation for that could potentially be a lot of the stories I heard about the Old House Woods were at night. Perhaps she glows at night.
Like a glow stick.
No, glow sticks glow when cracked, Zoey.
Yes, I know, but you can't really see them glowing until it's dark.
Okay,
and she
like
clearly cracked her neck, so.
Yes, she did, Zoey. Yes, she did.
I do have to point out something. The initial phrasing of when they ran away, it just said, "We started running," and it's had a couple sentences, and then it said, "as we ran away," and I was like, oh, okay. My first thought was that they were running towards her to try to save her.
No, they were in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, fair.
Yeah, no, fair.
Really fair. I feel... if I saw that, be like, I am not equipped to handle anything that just happened there.
I am not a psychiatrist. I cannot help here.
Nor am I a surgeon or a chiropractor or
Yeah.
I'm not even a weatherman, y'all. I can't do anything.
Well, I say, like, 4.9 out of 5. That's the storm woman.
I love that is your takeaway. You know, I'm gonna give it the same one.
4.9?
I'm gonna give it a 4.9 out of 5 too. Yeah. I should comment on that Reddit thread. Be like, we think it's a storm woman.
Yeah. How old was it? Because I think if it's older than a year, it's locked.
I'd have to recheck.
Okay.
I'll check after this, but I don't know how Reddit works. I just go there for the stories.
If you send me the link, I could check.
Yeah. Thank you, Zoey.
You're welcome.
Okay. This is from Reddit user Slightly Salty Chump.
Okay.
And it goes into where the hike is, but you wouldn't be able to recognize it when I read it verbatim because I had to Google it. So just know this is Georgia.
Okay.
This is Georgia. And this is a short one, so I kind of think of it as like a half-C story.
Okay.
Okay. It starts like this. I have a story. Happened this year between Hog Pen Gap and Low Cap Shelter. I decided to do a day hike and parked at Hog Pen Gap. I started my hike in the morning, and it took me about 2.5 hours to get to the shelter. I stopped to take photos of flowers, mushrooms, and the trail. Only saw about 3 people, as it was a Wednesday. Got to the shelter, pulled out a snack from my backpack. Started slowly walking back to Hog Pen while I'm checking the scenery and eating my protein bar. I saw an owl up in a tree, took a photo, and then off I went. I heard a noise. I couldn't make out exactly what it was. An animal walking, people mumbling. I couldn't figure it out, as it was off in the distance, but it didn't bother me. I just looked around. Maybe 10 minutes later, I heard it again, a tad bit closer. Again, I looked around and see nothing. I got to a point on the trail where a huge rock overhangs a drop-off. I take about 2 steps past the spot, and I hear the noise right behind me. I quickly snap my head around as it took me by surprise. I see a dress hanging in the air. Where feet and head should be, there is nothing. Just a dress. Red and white with a checkerboard pattern. I can see through parts of the dress to see the tree behind it. I nearly jumped out of my skin. I actually gasped out loud, and then it just shimmered/faded away. I turned around and started trekking. I was on edge for a good hour. I searched the web but never found any information on that spot. So, okay, that's the end of that.
Mm-hmm.
That was just like a weird little phenomenon.
Yeah.
I'm confused as to like how material it is without actually having like any human features to it.
Yeah, like she said in spots she could see through it, and I'm like it has holes or is more translucent in spots, and like did it look like it was on a person but it just didn't have a person in it?
Where she said, I mean, I don't know in terms of like definition, like if you can see it like 3D hanging on a body that is just invisible, but it did seem, she said, to be like hanging in a way where you could tell like, okay, well, there would be feet here, there would be a head here.
What about
in
the
which
hands?
case, perhaps, I'm assuming if they were hands, she would have mentioned that. Imagine just like no feet, no head, but you do have hands.
Yes.
Hands.
Just
yeah. I also, in this reading, I think when I first read it, what stuck out to me was just like the whole dress of it all. But actually, in this rereading that I did just now, I'm interested in the repetition of that noise leading up to it. So she had that noise, walked 10 minutes, heard it again, and then is at an overhang, walks just past it, hears the noise right behind her, turns around, and then there's the dress. And then it goes away. The dress goes away.
Can you read the description of the noise again?
I heard a noise. I couldn't make exactly what it was. An animal walking or people mumbling. I couldn't figure it out as it was off in the distance, but it didn't bother me. So, okay, animal walking or people mumbling, which is two different sounds to me. But I can get it being kind of a vague feeling. I mean, if it's somebody walking, then that sounds pretty clear to me, like, okay, somebody is following you, waiting to reveal itself potentially.
Yeah.
People mumbling, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Is it mumbling to itself? Is it mumbling to somebody else?
Huh. Because, like, my thought, if I see a dress hanging there, is, oh, somebody was hanging there, like, to death. But I just don't get that vibe, you know?
And honestly, I don't know if that could physically happen.
Yeah,
because
with
you're
the
at
overhang.
a rock overhang. I don't know if there's tree.
Yeah. I don't know. That's weird.
Big enough at that. It is weird. One of the reasons I mentioned that is because it reminded me, and this is a 180 in terms of tone, it reminded me of a tidbit from my research on Mary the Wanderer, our first episode, that I cannot remember if it made into the actual episode.
Okay.
But either way, there was a group of teen boys who decided to play a prank about Mary the Wanderer, and they got a white dress and strung it up between two telephone poles on either side of a road, and they really freaked out residents that night because they would just be driving along and then just all of a sudden their headlights would shine on a floating white dress, and everybody was like freaking out about Mary the Wanderer. And then it was like, I think in the newspaper, it was like, okay, it was just the boys. It was just boys. I just found that really funny.
Yeah.
And I wanted to eventually share that with you.
Yeah, but that wouldn't explain how it sizzled out of existence.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah,
No. Yeah, this was not a prank because I don't think that there were things on either side that you could string it up for, and also, like, I feel like you would be able to tell. She would be able to tell.
Well, maybe when she was taking a photo of some of those mushrooms, maybe she ate one and was high.
Honestly, that does kind of sound like a trip.
I mean, like a
Yeah.
mild one, so maybe she just inhaled spores on accident instead. But, like...
Do you know how many, like, weird experiences we've discussed on the show, like, people have that we're reporting on or something for paranormal reasons, whatever, but, like, how many of those would be explained by shrooms? Just be like, I did shrooms beforehand, and then these things happen, and be like,
That makes sense.
okay, ghosts are not real.
Ghosts are not real. Shrooms are.
Okay, my next story I have for you, I don't know, I'm wondering if I should flip them around. No, I'll do the story first. The reason I was wondering if I should flip it around and save it for last is because I think this is the one that freaks me out the most, but I don't always have a good barometer of what freaks you out the most, Zoe, so I'm just gonna... I don't know, so I'm just gonna do it now. This was posted by a Reddit user who has since deleted their profile.
Okay.
It was posted 4 years ago, and you can find a link on our webpage that you can find in the show notes. So this has been edited for length.
Okay.
Since we're having a 3-day weekend here in the U.S., I decided to meet and explore Virginia with my friend. I took the train from New York to D.C. to meet him, as we had planned to drive up to Virginia. Everything was going fine, and we were having a good time until a pit stop at the gas station. Here's where the confusion starts. I'm so amazed at this that I need to put it in bullet points. So just understand that things are written in bullet points. My friend gets out of the car and pumps gas, then walks over to a small supermarket to get us some snacks. I stayed in the car and took the opportunity to try to check for nearby Wi-Fi. I see my friend walk into the supermarket, and I know this for sure because I was planning to capture an image of him with my Pentax. Parentheses, I'm into film photography and usually take pics of everything. As I'm doing this, my friend comes back in the car and looks directly at me and asks me where we are headed. I look over at him and laugh and said, "You're driving, idiot. Use the GPS." Then asked him where the snacks were. My friend looks really annoyed, and I can see on his face that he was a little pissed. He didn't say anything in return and came out of the car and walked away. I didn't take this too seriously, and I've known him for years, and we've argued back and forth before. Here's where it gets weird. Not even a minute later, I see my friend walking out of the supermarket with bags. I looked over at the other side and at the back of the car to see if anyone was there, and I saw no one. I am extremely confused at this point. Eventually, my friend gets in the car and starts showing me the snacks he had bought. I asked him if he was here before, like literally a minute ago, and he says no and asks if I'm crazy. He said that he was in the supermarket and never came back to the car since he left. I told him what happened, and he insisted I was daydreaming, but I know I wasn't. I know I was fully awake. Anyway, there was nothing to argue for, and I figured maybe I was daydreaming, or at least I told myself that. We decided to just continue on our trip. About 40 minutes later, we were driving through a forest area, and I told my friend to slow down as I wanted to take some photos. He eventually stopped and decided that he needed to piss, so I took the opportunity to follow him at least halfway where I could take pics inside the forestry area without being alone. We entered a walkway area, and my friend goes deeper into the side path among the bushes, where he wasn't visible to me anymore. I have to say that it was the gloomiest view, and it gave me the feeling that we weren't there alone. I put both my phone and camera away to observe the moment, and what felt like forever as well. I got a bit agitated, as I didn't like the feeling of being alone there, and I sort of had the feeling that I was being watched. As I'm standing there, I begin to hear rustling from the side, which caught my eyes to look over. I saw that my friend was pointing me to come over. He was just standing there, waving, and he looked really scared. His eyes almost looked gray, and it was just plain weird. At this point, I was sort of annoyed and told him that I'm walking back to the car in some sort of hope that he would just quit this shit and walk back with me. So I turned around and went back onto the path and started walking towards the road, only to look back to see if my friend was following me. He wasn't. In fact, there was no one there. Right, immediately when I noticed my friend wasn't there, I heard someone walking up to me from the other side. I almost screamed as to how scared I was. I turned around, and it was my friend. It was weird because he came up to me, talking nonchalantly like nothing had happened. I gave him a friendly punch and asked him what he was calling me to see, and I shit you not, he said he had never called me for anything. I really don't know anymore. I'm at a loss for words. There was no way that I was daydreaming 2 times. I wasn't on any sort of drugs, nor was I intoxicated or even drinking. I'm just amazed by all of this and incredibly confused as to how I was encountered by the same face and body, wearing the same clothes and everything, yet my friend is claiming it wasn't him. I'm originally from Brazil and have heard ghost stories before, but never have I encountered anything as creepy as this. My friend is not someone who would continuously pull a prank like it. It just isn't his personality, and even if he did, it won't explain how he was able to switch places so quickly in the matter of a minute. That scared me.
That's creepy. That's really, really creepy.
I think one of the reasons it scares me most is that when you are like going on, let's say, an excursion, an adventure with somebody, like, okay, Zoe, we have gone on like a ghost tour to Charleston together. We have been in Charleston at night kind of looking for spirits. If it was at a point, if something happened and I could not trust that you were you, that would just shift everything. Because like I feel like at that point, if you are leaving to a new place to do something with somebody else, that person kind of, you become like a dual security for each other. You are the buddy system. And
Right.
if you're like, I have no idea if this is my buddy or not, I don't know
Right.
if I can trust this person.
At that point, it's like, nope, I'm going home. Bye.
Please get your own transportation. Super sorry if you're you, but if you're not, I'm dead.
Yeah, no, like, I could think of, like, 3 possibilities. So, one...
I can only think of one. So what are your...
Oh.
Yeah.
So, one...
What are your 3?
Your friend has a secret identical twin that he's never told you about, and they are playing a prank. A very cruel one. And the friend was hiding in the trunk the whole time.
In tandem? Okay.
Yes. 2, it is a demon, beast, whatever you want to call it, that is purposely masquerading as your friend to try to, like, get you into the woods, you know? Because you've heard of demons, like, mimicking voices and stuff like that. So it's not a big assumption to assume that they can also mimic face. 3, timey-wimey, spacey-wacy kind of thing, where this is your friend's ghost from another timeline who died that day.
I'm sorry. Wait, can you just walk me through that a little bit? I'm sorry.
So, your friend died in another timeline. Like, a parallel universe that's pretty close to ours.
Okay.
And his ghost gets confused and gets into our world instead of his original world and is haunting you.
Okay, so community reference. That ghost's original timeline is the darkest timeline.
I have not watched Community.
Okay, fine. Well, okay, so those are really interesting. My theory is something that I think kind of, I don't know about the alternate timeline, but my theory is something that encompasses, I think, the first 2, just because it is, my theory is the, I think, effect, and there is different reasons given for the reason behind why this effect is happening. So doppelganger. Yeah. Is what I thought. And also, people on Reddit thought too, but I'm just saying I did have the thought immediately before I read their comments, so I just wanted to let everybody know. But, so I did kind of basically a mini something spooky about doppelgangers to kind of go along with that. One of them is a very interesting theory that I'm pulling from. But, so doppelganger, they're actually... By the way, this is just Wikipedia. I didn't go terribly deep into it. But doppelgangers can exist across a lot of different cultures, or the idea of them exists across a lot of different cultures, from Egyptian and Greek to Scandinavian. The word itself is from a German word that means, like, double walker. Okay, it means, like, there's 2 of you at once. The idea is that if you see it, you're going to soon experience bad luck. And they are sometimes... They're thought of as different ways. Sometimes as a paranormal being, in which case the demon thing, that would kind of explain, like, that theory you had, which, by the way, you came up with those 3 theories, like, really fast, by the way. Good job.
Thank you.
And then the other times they're thought of as an evil twin, which is literally your other theory, that they had a twin in the trunk. One tradition in particular, and this one just stuck with me because I think it has a certain level of uncertainty to it that I think potentially lends itself to this story. In Norse mythology, it's doppelganger, but it's the word they use, and I'm going to mispronounce this, is like Vardoger or something. Okay. Something like similar to that. And it is a paranormal being that looks like you or looks like somebody in particular, and it can be seen doing things that person will be doing in the future. And so if we apply that idea to this story, and I didn't put this in here, but actually one of the things I edited out was that this person wrote this out and posted it to Reddit very, very soon after it happened, like before they even got back to New York, where they're from. And I'm just wondering if at any point on that trip, the friend got agitated and asked, where are we going? But it didn't match up with, like, what was happening in that moment. Or if at any point in the trip, and this is obviously the freakiest part, where the friend looks scared and is kind of pointing to that person coming to them. I don't know. I was just wondering, like, did that happen after he posted this? I don't know. We don't have a follow-up.
Or maybe not that trip, but maybe, like, a trip 2 years in the future or something like that, you know?
Yeah. I'm very glad that the writer did not go over to the friend. I don't know what would happen. This is, if you see me looking to the side while I'm telling this, if you're watching on YouTube or Zoey in front of me, it's because I'm freaked out. I'm trying not to see anything. Okay. So let's rate that one. 0. Oh, we didn't rate the previous one. That's fine.
That's
but
fine.
This one, 1 to 5. How? When I say haunted, let's just do like how paranormal something is happening here, or otherworldly something is happening here. I'm gonna go with a 5 just because I'm freaked out.
Okay. I'm completely freaked out. I don't think it was a ghost. I don't think that was a thing. I don't want to give it a 5. I guess like a 4. I'm just...
Okay. So are you thinking there's a good chance that the friend could have happened to have been like just kind of quick about it, or was being like extra mischievous, or there's factors that our person or writer wasn't taking in consideration?
This sounds like, to me, it's almost too spooky to be true kind of thing.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
That's the only reason I docked at one point.
That is a good point. I'm just over here blindly believing things. I did kind of get suspicious over the dress, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah. That one, okay, let's go back, and I would say that one's a 2.
I was thinking that for that one too. Yeah. Just because, like, sometimes when things are hard for me to visualize, and that is included in the, if y'all are heard me talking about how I just cannot really get behind haunted dolls, it's just hard for me to visualize the dress floating.
Gotcha.
Whereas it is not hard at all for me to visualize just like kind of a gray-eyed version of your friend. Now, I will say I was very specific, and I'm not saying people don't lie on the internet. I just wanted to let you know that as much as I don't know about Reddit, I am good at knowing what Reddit threads are specifically meant for, like creepypastas versus like true stories, which kind of sucks because there was this one thread called Backwoods Creepy, and it had things that would be perfect for this podcast, but it, in the description of the thread itself, it had said like some of these things are true, some of them are fiction, and I'm like, no, I can't use any of them if you have that caveat in there.
Right. Like, at least have a tag where you can tag it as true or tag it as fiction, you know?
Yeah, and then I was thinking, like, okay, in the beginning, if it says it's true, is that just like the narrator of their story?
Right, yeah.
It's like, you'll find that in fiction too, y'all.
Yeah.
I don't know. But that was, I'm gonna be really scared the next time I'm like in the woods at dark with a friend driving. It might be with you, Zoey, who knows where our adventures will take us in about 3 months when I can walk again. Okay, so our next and last story of this episode is from Reddit user Spooktober36S.
Okay.
This is edited for length and clarity, but the setup is that she recently moved close to the wilderness in the Carolinas with her boyfriend and 2 dogs. Okay? Okay. We moved onto the land in late May, and everything seemed great. A few weeks ago, I started taking my 2 dogs out for walks around the forest to check where the property lines were, and also just to enjoy the scenery, as it's really beautiful. We got to where the property line ended and the national forest began, and I wanted to go further in as I knew there was a trail you could take nearby that leads to the top of the mountain and a rest area where I planned to call my boyfriend and have him come get me and the dogs. The actual hike itself might take about 1.5 hours, and there is a road the rangers take to get to the top that he could drive up. We were about halfway to the trail, or so I thought, when my German Shepherd named Crush takes off into the woods barking. He's usually very well trained and comes when called, but he was hell-bent on chasing something. Luckily, my other dog isn't as excitable, and she stayed by me. We went deeper into the forest, looking for my dog, when I heard what I thought was a wild boar. If you have never heard of boar, imagine what you assume a demon crawling out of hell sounds like, and that's pretty much it. I got nervous, as I know a boar could easily gut my dog with their tusk, and I started yelling out for Crutch to come. I could hear him barking angrily, and we made our way to where the sounds were coming from. I found him looking up, barking and snarling near a large tree, and tried to pull him away. He wouldn't budge. I had to literally pick up this 80-pound dog and shuffle carry him about 100 feet away where I set him down. My other dog stayed by the tree whining, her tail between her legs. I called for her to come to me, and she did a 180 and took off in the other direction. I looked up in the tree, but couldn't really see much, so I just chalked it up to one big-ass raccoon. It took about 2 hours, but I was finally back on my land with the dogs. I told my boyfriend about it when he got home, and he recommended not taking them out too far without leashes, as to avoid this again. When I asked him what he thought it was, he agreed either an opossum or a raccoon, but I told him it didn't explain the boar sound. He said, "It's the woods, there's lots of animals," and left it at that. A few days later, I was working from home when my dogs started going nuts. Crush started snarling and jumping up at the window. I yelled for them to stop barking, and since I had to make a call, I let the dogs out with the intention to bring them back and afterwards. It took all of 10 minutes. When I opened the door, my little dog was sitting on the porch and bolted inside, but Crush was gone. I stepped out and started calling for him, scanning the woods for a big, furry, black butt. I couldn't see or hear him, so I started into the woods calling for him. I made my way to where the house was being built, and he was standing by the right-hand side of it. I called for him. He stood there frozen, ignoring me. So I walked over to him when I saw what he was staring at. It was very large and on all fours. I don't know what it was. At first, my initial thought was a manged, hairless bear because of its size, but there aren't bears in that forest. I double-checked before I moved in because I was worried about the dogs getting into it with one. It was also lean, so I knew it wasn't a bear, as it was too thin to be one healthy enough to walk. There was fur or hair, but only on the back, and it was either dark brown or black. I couldn't see a face, but could tell it did not have an animal's snout. I grabbed Crush's collar and tried to tug him toward the construction, trying not to make any sudden movements. I felt the thing watching me as I led Crush into the middle of the concrete. I didn't take my eyes off of it. It was about 10 yards away when I heard the boar noise again, and it was coming from it. Crush started barking and jumping towards it with me attached to him via collar. I just said, "Fuck that," jerked Crush back towards me, and started running back toward the mobile home. I slammed the door, locking it behind me, and grabbed my gun. I called my boyfriend a few times before he answered and started yelling at him to come home. There is something on the property. He was home in 10 minutes and took his truck over to construction. When he got back, he said he didn't see anything. It's been a couple weeks since then, and this past weekend I saw it again. My boyfriend had to work late, so I was home with the dogs, watching TV, when my little one scratched at the door to be let out to potty. Crush followed her out, and I left them to do their business. When I opened the door, the little one was shaking and couldn't get in fast enough. She hid under the dining table and refused to come out. I called out for Crush and couldn't see him, as he's a black dog in the woods at night. I grabbed the flashlight and walked the perimeter of the house looking for him. I saw a big, furry black butt at the back of the house where the tree line began and called for him. He didn't move. I started towards him when I heard a bark from behind me. I felt my heart and stomach drop. I wanted to cry because I knew what I was looking at, and it wasn't my dog, because Crush must have been behind me. I felt this overwhelming fear and dread and anger and did something insane and stupid. I yelled at it and threw sticks. I told it to get away from us, get off my land, that I wanted to fucking kill it. I seriously thought I was losing my mind because before I knew it, I was running towards it. I was about 5 feet away when that thing leapt up and into the woods. Its back legs were so long I thought it was about to kick me. It smelled like earth and rot. I got a better look at the back of its body this time. It was borderline human-looking. Long limbs, short torso. Luckily, my moment of insanity was over, and my dumbass didn't chase it into the woods. I was mildly pleased with myself that I got it to run away. I started heading back towards Crush and the house when I heard the boar noises again, only they weren't just behind me, but all around the woods. I told my boyfriend. He thinks I was seeing things. I called my dad, who told me to burn sage on the property and have a shaman come and bless the land, as he thinks it's a skinwalker, parentheses, her dad is Blackfoot, end parentheses.
Her
Blackfoot. So, Blackfeet Nation is a Native American tribe based in Montana.
I'm sorry,
So
I processed that as Bigfoot. I'm like, wait, you're just gonna go what?
Parentheses, her dad is Bigfoot. No, that's not
Okay.
what that was.
Yeah.
So I wanted to share this one, I think, particularly with you because it's very cryptid.
Yeah.
Like, because it's like this animal that you cannot figure out
what it is.
It's like, it could be a really, really thin
bear with mange.
Hair only on its back. Bear with mange, hair only on its back that sounds like a boar, but has somewhat human proportions in the long legs to short torso ratio. I don't know, it sounds pretty cryptidish to me.
Absolutely. From what I know about skinwalkers, it does not sound like a skinwalker because skinwalkers are really tall. They walk on their back feet and like they're really, 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 really skinny. Like they can blend in with the trees, skinny, like hide behind a tree. So from what I know about skinwalkers, I would not say that. However, I will not claim to know more about skinwalkers than a actual Native American.
Yeah, I thought about doing research and then kind of going into it in this portion, but then I had previously seen something that said it was kind of disrespectful to like try to educate others on skinwalkers when you are not Native American and it's not part of your culture and you didn't grow up with it. So I figured I kind of wouldn't if they said it's disrespectful to do that. But I agree that it does give off very cryptid vibes. You are much more the cryptid expert than I am, but I'm just saying, if we run across anything that sounds like this in our future cryptid research, we should refer back to it.
100%. And like honestly, as you were telling it, I was like, it kind of sounds like the Ozark Howler, and I was, but obviously wrong location because she said she was in the Carolinas, right?
Yeah. Okay. So the Ozark Howler, what did that look like again?
It looked like, imagine Beauty and the Beast walking on all fours and looking a little bit more feral. So I'm not saying like the way it kind of does, but the Ozark Howler is completely fur. It doesn't have just the fur on the back. And people have said that it screams when they don't compare it to a boar. So it is different. It's definitely not the same thing. I just couldn't help but thinking of that one story I told you that was probably fabricated, of the guy in the woods on his dad's property with the ghost. Yeah.
I can't remember it.
So like basically he went into the woods and he saw it and he ran away and was able to get away because there was a ghost that like pointed him to run. No, you don't remember that? Okay.
I think it's ringing a bell. That's very interesting. Ghost pointing you to run so you get away. Okay.
I think we determined in the episode that it sounded fake.
Yeah, I think I remember that one being like, I was not terribly convinced. So, okay, on a scale from 1 to 5, how cryptid do you think this is? My answer, I'm a 3.
It sounds very cryptid to me. I'm gonna say a 4. However,
okay, cool.
I do want to fault this woman for freaking not getting the hint and keeping her dogs on leashes. Like,
yeah,
especially in that third situation where it's a pretty much identical situation to the second one. Like, always keep your dogs on leashes, not because of what you're afraid of them doing to other dogs, but because of what other dogs doing to them. You can't control the whole world. Like, come on. Now, I get if they have like a fenced-in backyard, that would be one thing. But
yeah, but it doesn't sound like it was a fenced situation. Because she had mentioned construction and that they were in a mobile home, so I guess it was kind of like a temporary situation. And I mean, and I know a lot of, you know, if you're more further out, which it sounds like she was, you kind of don't really think of that as an issue. But I do agree, like, at least maybe after, like, you kind of have identified that there's something in the woods that at least one of your dogs is having a confrontation with, like, be best to at least
keep an eye on them.
Yeah. Keep an eye on. But I'm glad everybody ended safely. I realized as I was reading it out loud to you that, like, perhaps you thought this would end with a dog dying, I wouldn't actually do that without at least giving a disclaimer beforehand that a dog was going to die. I probably wouldn't even read it if a dog was going to die.
I did have the thought, but as I had the thought, I immediately had the other thought of, no, Robin wouldn't read that story on the podcast.
No, I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't. Trust me. The dogs are fine, including Crush.
Including Crush, the
like
dumb butt.
The dumb butt.
Yes, the dumb butt.
All right, so this is our first installment of something that's either going to be creepy encounters in the wild or there's something. But do you think you would be interested in continuing this at some point?
Yeah, I really like the shorter, like, compilation of them just because it feels more refreshing, I guess. So that was fun. I like it.
Yeah, we're shaking it up.
Shaking it up a little. Well, speaking of shaking it up.
And also I didn't have to make... What?
No, go ahead. What were you going to say?
And also I didn't have to remember 12 pages of history.
True. Speaking of shaking it up, next episode, we're going to shake it up by going back to the Haunted College Palooza tour.
College tour. Palooza. Yes. We'll get that right next time.
It's fine.
So it's coming up on August, y'all.
Yeah.
So we will do again what we did last year, which was each episode in August. So every Tuesday in August, we're going to come out with an episode that explores 2 haunted colleges in a given state, and we cannot wait to scare incoming freshmen.
Yes,
that's the singular goal.
Yes. You know,
you guys really seemed to enjoy the haunted college tour last time, so I cannot wait to do it again. And I enjoyed it too.
And I have had friends like come to me and be like, oh, here's my personal story of the college I went to. And 100% I'm going to include that.
Oh, yay. That is so exciting.
Yeah.
I've got to start asking around about that. Okay. I'll send a thing to group chats. Be like, did y'all have an experience? Yes. Was it Southern?
First of all, did you go to a Southern college? Second of all, was it haunted?
Was it haunted?
Yes.
All right. Everybody, thank you for listening to today's episode. If you liked it, please rate, subscribe, review, tell a friendo, follow us, subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/hauntedhospitality. For just $3 a month, you get a new episode from us.
Yes, and it comes out on the 13th because we are spooky. If you want to see Robin's sources for this episode, you can head over to hauntedhospitality.wordpress.com. And if you have your own spooky story, perhaps in the woods, you can write to us at hauntedhospitalitypodcast@gmail.com. And something about internet. Yeah, we're on the internet.
Yeah, we're on the internet. You can slide into our DMs. We are on Twitter at Haunted Host. We are also on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Haunted Hospitality. We hope to see you there. Stay spooky.